If I were a betting man, Costco stock is either in your portfolio currently or certainly on your wish list. I mean, who doesn't want Costco stock in their portfolio? So why in late 2022 did I sell every single share of Costco that I own? Hey everybody, my name is Wayne Nichols, and you know that my motto is small goals, big victories. And on my way to building generational wealth, sometimes you got to make some difficult decisions. And selling all of my Costco stock was certainly one of those most difficult decisions that I made in 2022. So let's go see how this unfolded. What you're seeing here on your screen is my Robinhood portfolio from the app view on my cell phone. And you can see here that one of my very first purchases in 2021, when I first began to invest in the stock market, was I made a $50 purchase of Costco stock way back in February of 2021. And from that point forward, you can see here that I occasionally picked up stocks when I could. And right around late December of 2021, I began dollar cost averaging nearly every single day, every single month. And for the next year and a half, I amassed a pretty good share count of Costco. So why did I sell all of my Costco shares in November of 2021? You can see here, I sold approximately 35 shares for about $4.79 a pop. So just to kind of give you some context, up to that point, here is a screen capture before I sold all 35 shares, and you can see that my cost basis was $4.76 per share. So I sold these shares, and you can see here from the sales transaction, 35 shares at $4.79 a pop. So you take that $3 difference, you times it by 35 shares. That means I only made about $105 on that total transaction. So again, why would I sell all 35 of my Costco shares that I worked so hard to amass over this year and a half? Well, I think the answer might surprise you. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I invested in, and that is the Russell 2000 ETF. And you're thinking, Wayne, you got rid of all of your Costco shares for the Russell 2000 ETF. What is the Russell 2000 ETF? Well, let's go ahead and head out to their website directly and get some information about this particular stock. So the Russell 2000 ETF, stock ticker IWM. Let's break down the 3 reasons why they think you should own this company. Number 1, gives you exposure to small public U.S. companies. 2, access to 2,000 small cap domestic stocks in a single ETF fund. And for those of you that are looking to invest in IWM, they believe it would help you diversify your U.S. stock allocation and seek long-term growth in your portfolio. So is this the reason that I invested in IWM? Well, not exactly. And again, for full disclosure, this is not any type of financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes. You're just sort of seeing what I did earlier in the month, as a matter of fact. Actually, it would be November of 2021. So you can see here that I sold all 35 shares of my Costco. What did I do with that money? Approximately $17,000. Well, guess what, guys? I bought 100 shares of IWM. And one of the reasons that I wanted to own IWM is because of the premiums that you can make selling covered calls. You guys know on my path to building generational wealth that I am not only focused on dividend stocks, long-term growth, but I am also looking to generate cash flow by selling covered calls on my current shares. Now, you have to own 100 shares before you can sell covered calls on any position that you own. So what I did was I sold all of my Costco shares. And I'm gonna go back over here, and you can see here that on November 4th, I sold $17,000 worth of my Costco. And if I go back over here and I search for IWM, let's go ahead and track this. If I scroll all the way to the very bottom, clicking on my history, you guys can see here that in October, I began selling cash secured puts, and it was honestly a pretty good way to make some decent premiums. But I began to look at the options chain and quickly realized that I could probably make more money selling covered calls to include collecting a decent sized dividend yield. So you can see here on November 4th, I purchased 100 shares of IWM. So here it goes. Here's the buy. November 4th, I bought 100 shares, and it did cost me a little bit more, about $500+ more than what I made on the Costco transaction. So it's an interesting trade, right? Would you trade 35 shares of Costco for 100 shares of IWM? What are the benefits? Well, let's go ahead and take a look here at the income that I have since generated with selling covered calls. And it's kind of interesting because the very first day that I bought 100 shares of IWM, I immediately sold my first covered call. Now, going back here, one thing I want to point out, you guys see my cost basis, right? 100 shares for $175.95. Let's go ahead and see the range of this stock in the last year. And you can see here, they're down 21%. 5 years, they're up about 14%. And if we look at the 52-week range, you can see here in the last 52 weeks, it has ranged from a low of 162.50 to a high of 227.13. So for me to have got in at about 175, I feel pretty good with that entry point. I point that out because every covered call that I have sold since has been above my cost basis. And if you know anything about selling covered calls, that's kind of the first rule with selling covered calls, right? You never want to risk losing 100 shares. Does it happen? Yes. Do I do it? I do. But with this particular stock, I was lucky to have got in at a low price point that I don't have to sell below my cost basis. And look at this, just from November 4th of 2022 to as recently as today, right? This video is being filmed the 29th. I've been able to generate a total of $1,000. So here's the question. Was selling those shares of Costco a mistake? Why didn't I just keep dollar cost averaging? And for me, what excites me is, yes, I owned 35 shares of Costco, but 100 shares of IWM are worth more to me in the sense that I can generate premium income. And so in the last month, I've generated $1,000. Let's go ahead and take a look at my current position in IWM. And I can tell you right now, my cost basis, again, is $175.95. The current share price is $174. So I am down about 1%, $155. Let's go ahead and take a look at what I've also generated in the month that I've earned, or I've owned 100 shares, and that is my dividend, right? You can see here, just this past month, for owning 100 shares, I made $82.95. So you take that $82.95, you take the 1,080 that I've made, and even though I am currently down just under 1%, I would consider that to be a pretty fair trade. Now, more importantly, what am I doing with that cash premium that I've earned from IWM? Well, guess what, guys? I do have a little bit of seller's remorse, and ever since I sold my shares of Costco, I just, it's like I've yearned to get them back. So let's go ahead and go back to Costco. And I want to show you guys that even though I sold all of my shares in November, I have since worked to buy back my position. And what's really cool is when I sold those shares of Costco, if you recalled, my cost basis here, we'll go back to my screenshot here. When I sold those shares, I owned 35 at a cost basis of $4.76 per share. Take a look at what has happened to Costco in the last month since I've sold, and they are down about 13%. Now, did I time this perfectly? I don't know. I think I just got lucky in this sense. But in essence, what I was able to do is start taking some of that income that I'm generating from selling covered calls. And now I've been able to slowly rebuild my position. You can see here that I currently own 5 shares. And my cost basis is down significantly, right? My entry point now is $4.57 per share. So that's really the goal. Yes, I sold my Costco shares. Yes, I want them back. But for me, it was a pretty fair trade because I am now able to sell covered calls on a regular basis. And you can see, guys, even though I've only owned this stock since November, right? That's almost 2 months. You can see here, guys, that I am selling sometimes 2 to 3 covered calls per week. So what I would say is if you have any interest of selling covered calls, first of all, you have to understand the full concept of selling options. I'm not the guy to teach you that. I've learned from some of the best guys out there on YouTube. Brad Finn immediately comes to mind. But you also want to make sure that you're picking the right stock to sell covered calls. And for me, since November, I feel that I've really stumbled upon a pretty good stock to sell covered calls. Now, my ultimate goal is to not part ways with these shares. So I am going to be selling covered calls in 2023, and I want you guys to stay tuned and see how I do. The goal for me, though, is to not have any of those covered calls result in my shares being called away. So let's see if I can generate enough extra income in 2023. And the goal being, I want to roll over every single penny I can and get 100 shares of Costco, or at the very least, buy back those 35 shares that I had to sell, and of course, buy back at a lower cost basis. Hey, once again, guys, I really appreciate you letting me share my experience. You're following my journey. If you found value in this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you think I still made a crazy decision, go ahead and throw that in the comments as well. And once again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.